Coming up on Lawmakers. The House votes on the resolution that would put a ban on gay marriage in the state constitution. The House and Senate can't seem to compromise on key points in the FY05 budget. And tort reform legislation is hotly debated on the Senate floor. Those stories and more are coming up next.
Live from Atlanta, this is Lawmakers for Wednesday, March 31st. Here are your hosts, Gerald Bryant and Mwandi Lawson.
Good evening, everyone. It is Legislative Day 38. The work under the Gold Dome continues. The House and the Senate are still in session at this hour with a lot of bills to consider.
That's right. There are still very many important issues that have not yet been debated, including the measures that would ban smoking in public places and the financial flexibility portion of the governor's education package.
You're looking at a picture of the House now with Majority Leader Jimmy Skipper talking about the possibility of adjournment and what is to be done with the budget. Our top story tonight, the amendment to Georgia's state constitution that would ban same-sex marriages.
And the Senate resolution that provides for a vote on this November banning gay marriage in Georgia's Constitution has passed the House by a vote of 122 to 52. The resolution, SR 595, was placed on the supplemental rules calendar today after House Speaker Terry Coleman told the Rules Committee he wanted to see a second vote on the resolution on the House floor today. Lawmakers Jesse Freeman joins us live from the Capitol with more. Jesse.
In Mwandi, the House passed special rules this evening limiting debate on SR 595 to 90 minutes. The debate started around 5 o'clock, but House members were still discussing it just moments ago. Of course, they have just passed the resolution. Of course, the debate began in full really this morning when SR 595 was placed on the supplemental calendar.
595. Is there objection? Object. All those who want to put it on say aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. It's on.
There was no discussion about SR 595 in the House Rules Committee today. The important discussion took place yesterday.
Yesterday in the Rules Committee meeting, the Speaker made a rare appearance, showed up at the meeting and asked for 595 to come out onto the floor either on the 38th or the 39th day.
Gay rights advocates say they expected another fight on the resolution and they are prepared for it.
Regardless of what the House vote is and regardless of whether or not this goes to the polls, this issue does not go away. Because people are still going to love one another, people are still going to commit to each other for life, and just as interracial marriage had to be struck down over time, just as the rights of African Americans to marry had to be won over time, this will be won over time also.
The resolution needs a 2/3 majority to be added to the November ballot, and like last time, it should be a close vote.
I don't think anybody's going to know what the final vote's going to be until the final vote is taken.
Now, the resolution achieved that 2/3 majority necessary to add the constitutional question to the ballot just moments ago. That would be 122 yes votes. Here's some highlights from this evening's debate.
Nobody can stand here and say that anybody is harmed by two loving, committed individuals pledging their lives to each other. Who could that hurt?
Ultimately, it does not matter how we define marriage, because we will not change God's mind. But it is fitting for us as a government and also as a God-ordained creation to honor through law God's ordained definition of marriage as a union between a man and a woman.
Leviticus 25:44 states that I may indeed possess slaves, both male and female, provided they are purchased from neighboring nations. Mr. Hembry, is that just Canada and Mexico, or what about the Bahamas? Are they neighboring nations?
I ask you to give the people of Georgia the opportunity they deserve and allow them to vote on this marriage amendment.
Okay, once again, SR 595 has received a 2/3 majority. We will have reaction from the bill's author, Senator Mike Crotts, later in this broadcast. Reporting live, I'm Jesse Freeman for Lawmakers.
Thanks for the update, Jesse.
Meanwhile, the other big story of the day, negotiations for the 05 state budget appear to have stalled. House and Senate conferees agree that they haven't agreed on anything yet. Among those conferees, House Majority Leader Jimmy Skipper and House Rules Committee Chairman Calvin Smyre.
Things are not going too well. Budget negotiations fell apart last night. Looked like sine die maybe Friday.
I'm afraid that if we don't have some kind of movement on the budget today, we're going to end up in a special session to do the budget. And I don't think anybody wants that.
We're caught between Medicaid and education. We're trying to stand up and for education and make sure it's funded, and we've had some movement, but we just things are not going well.
Senate Appropriations Chairman Jack Hill says there are honest differences between the House and Senate. Hill says Senate conferees have tried to negotiate in good faith, but will not underfund Medicaid.
What we're boiled down to, of course, is we're proposing to restore about $125 million to local school boards of the 5% cut that is built into the administration's budget. The House, of course, has proposed a higher figure, but they are basically trying to balance the state budget out of underfunding Medicaid for next year.
Senator Hill agrees that a special session might be needed to resolve the budget impasse. He said negotiations so far have not resulted in an agreement on anything.
We have not negotiated a single entry on 19 pages of differences, and that is because we're not willing to negotiate small items until we agree on what the big numbers are, and we're not going to be a part of balancing the state budget out of a Medicaid figure that we're going to be back here in the middle of the year next year cutting education or cutting state programs to pay for an underfunding of Medicaid.
Now, at this point, there are no further budget conference meetings scheduled. That, of course, could change at any time.
And as we reported, the House recently passed Senate Resolution 595. Lawmakers Jesse Freeman joins us live from the Capitol with the bill's sponsor, Senator Mike Crotts. Jesse.
Wandy, I'm here with Senator Mike Crotts, sponsor of Senate Resolution 595. Senator, what's your reaction to the bill's passing today?
Well, today's a great day for the people of Georgia because their voice is going to be able to be heard, and that's what this bill was all about. So I congratulate the House on their courage today for taking a stand for the people of Georgia. And I especially want to thank the Speaker. The Speaker kept his word about this issue, that he would bring the bill to the floor for a vote, and he even personally went to the Rules Committee and asked that they put it on the calendar. So I thank him for that, and now the people of Georgia will go to the polls in November, and they'll further protect the sanctity of marriage from the activist judges. So the people's voice will be heard rather than judges' voices.
Senator, this resolution failed by a narrow margin earlier in the month. Are you surprised at all by the vote today?
No, not at all. We think that the vote was there close to the same vote before, but there were a couple of votes, as you remember, that were not registered on the machine. So we knew it was going to be very close, which it was, 122 votes, and we needed 120. So we're really excited about what happened for the people of Georgia today.
Indeed, a very close vote. Senator Mike Crotts, back to you, Wandy.
Thanks, Jesse. Now, meanwhile, the state Senate has been debating tort reform for the past 5 hours. Tort reform involves changing parts of the law regulating medical malpractice and settlements in personal injury claims. Doctors have been supporting tort reform. In particular, they want to cap the amount of awards for pain and suffering. Many attorneys oppose these caps. Senator Preston Smith is an attorney, but he spoke in favor of tort reform.
I've said before, and I say again, that this argument is not about making physicians or attorneys look good at the expense of the other. It is about a balancing of very, very important values that we have in our state. It is about balancing the rights of our citizens to redress their grievances and seek compensation for injuries caused by wrongdoers with the value of ensuring affordable access to quality health care in our state.
Senator Dan Lee is also an attorney. He sought to amend the tort reform measure, saying the issue is larger than attorneys or doctors.
You know, the problem tomorrow in tort reform won't be the number of lawsuits that are over $250,000 or the number of lawsuits that are over $750,000. It will be the multiplicity of lawsuits that should have never been filed against people who are out doing business in Georgia, not just doctors, not just people in health care, but every walk of life.
Senator Don Thomas is a family physician. He's in favor of tort reform, saying that the rising cost of medical malpractice insurance is putting the squeeze on Georgia doctors.
I employ in my office 10 people, and we have to give them a little pay increase at least yearly. Yet we're being squeezed from the top down, and medical malpractice insurance is a big part of this. We are in danger of losing physicians, neurosurgeons, orthopedics, OBGYN, ER. We're not only in danger, we're losing them.
Senator David Schaefer sought to amend the tort reform measure, saying if something isn't done soon, there will be no tort reform during this session.
This is the 38th day of the session. It's decision time. And for the last 37 days, we as politicians have done what politicians do. And we have postured, and we have preened, and we have tried to impress all of the special interests that are crowded out there in the lobby. The time now is for us to decide what we can actually get passed into law. And my concern, and the reason that I've offered these amendments, is I believe that we have an opportunity to pass meaningful reform into law. And I'm very concerned that we're going to allow the posturing and the preening to get in the way of that.
And at this hour, the Senate continues to debate tort reform. There are almost 30 amendments being debated right now. We'll let you know if the Senate takes a vote before we leave the air.
Meanwhile, Georgia Watch, along with other members of the community, voiced their opposition to tort reform at a rally today. Lawmakers Chrissy Thrasher joins us live with more. Chrissy.
Gerald, the group says that tort reform only benefits doctors and trial lawyers, not the victims of medical malpractice.
I'm here urging the Senate and the House to vote no on tort reform.
Jackie Boatwright is a victim of medical malpractice. She is here today along with other concerned citizens to tell legislators not to support tort reform. So what is your message here today?
Vote no for the tort reform.
Today we're expecting the state Senate to vote on tort reform proposals. There is a single bill and 20 amendments that are before them today. All of these amendments and this bill would limit the rights of patients to receive justice and just compensation in court.
The group is concerned over legislation that would tie a victim's salary to the amount a jury can award for non-economic damages in cases of medical malpractice.
Basically, by limiting the non-economic damages, you're limiting retired people, you're limiting stay-at-home moms, you're limiting children and people of color, you're limiting their compensation for no reason other than the fact that they're not in the workforce.
The group also revealed the findings of a recent study.
Doctors are not leaving your state. In fact, for the last decade, you have an increase of 38% in the number of doctors practicing here in Georgia. That growth rate is substantially faster than your population growth rate of 26%.
And those at the rally also said they believe the state is experiencing a temporary spike in malpractice insurance because of the business cycle of the insurance industry. Reporting live, I'm Chrissy Thrasher for Lawmakers.
Thank you, Chrissy.
Well, the House today agreed that students who are habitually disruptive, violent, or truant should have their licenses suspended. Senate Bill 428 is part of the governor's legislative package. Its passage came with 8 attempts to amend the bill, including moves to add other House education bills. Representative Tom Rice moved to prohibit high school dropouts from driving until they're 18.
Basically, what it does is raise from 90 days to 6 months the loss of a license for criminal sexual crimes, severe violence to teachers, severe violence to a student or another person, drug or alcohol possession, possession or use of a weapon on school property, and any suspensions for more than 10 cumulative days.
So I have an amendment that I'm offering that would raise the compulsory student age from 16, where they can drop out at 16. As a compromise, we thought that we would move it to 17.
This is the bullying bill that we passed earlier back in February. It has not made its way through the Senate, and I ask you to consider it favorably when it comes up. There was some question before about the definition, and people were not comfortable with the definition, but I submit to you that if we're comfortable with the definition of disrespectful conduct toward other students, bullying should not be a problem.
This bill gives local systems legal cover if they choose to suspend or expel students in grades K through 5.
This provision in this amendment allows schools to have a policy on suspending students who commit off-campus crimes.
The Chamber's amendment was adopted, as were 4 others. Representative Thomas's proposal to keep students in school through age 17 was defeated, as were the 2 amendments introduced by Representative Rice. The House passed Senate Bill 428 with a vote of 171 to 2. Because of the amendments, the measure now returns to the Senate.
This morning, the state Senate voted to reconsider legislation that would affect Georgia's Hope Scholarship program. House Bill 1325 did not pass when it came to a vote on the Senate floor last Thursday, but now gets another chance. David Zelski joins us live with the details. David.
Well, thanks, Gerald. Senate Higher Education Chair Bill Hamrick, a Republican, and House Higher Education Chair Louise McBee, a Democrat, say they've been working together to pass Hope legislation this year. But differences still remain, which will most likely be dealt with in a conference committee.
We have been meeting, we did for 2 days for an hour or so, and talked about the differences in the two bills, and they're not very far apart.
The 3-0, the residency, the trigger for the books and fees, and then the accountability for the checkpoints to make sure students stay on track.
We put in what we call a Pell waiver, which will allow students whose parents make less than $25,000 to keep the books without, they won't lose the books. And that certainly is a difference from the Senate. And I don't know how they will vote on that. I hope they approve it, but if they don't, that will be one of the grounds on which we have to try to reach some agreement.
We've had some preliminary discussions about the House and Senate versions and the differences, trying to find where we have common ground. So we're working to get to the point where we can have an agreement and everything's moving forward procedurally, as expected after we had the vote the other day where we didn't have enough people on the floor.
Now, Chairwoman McBee says Hope legislation needs to pass this year because it's an election year, which is extremely time-consuming for legislators. Reporting live, I'm David Zelski for Lawmakers.
Thank you very much, David.
The House today agreed on a compromise about how to distribute the state's water. The House Senate Conference Committee removed sections of House Bill 237 that dealt with water permit trading. The current bill focuses only on planning and implementation of a statewide water system by 2008. The House adopted the Conference Committee report by a vote of 169 to 3. The measure now needs Senate approval and the governor's signature to become effective. The House also agreed today to exempt the media from liability when broadcasting Amber Alerts. Those are the emergency child abduction information lines. Representative Rich Golick explained the need for the law while acknowledging that it will probably have to undergo revision next session.
The broadcaster's participation, though, is voluntary, and in recent time, the broadcasters have expressed some concern over potential liability on their actions as it relates to a Levi's call. As a result, the administration, in working together with the Georgia Association of Broadcasters and the Georgia Trial Lawyers Association, have come up with a bill, and this is an engrossed bill, that will provide an exemption to broadcasters from liability for the broadcast of any information in a Levi's call, provided the information they broadcast is that which they get from law enforcement.
There are some problems with this language.
Thank you for the question. There are some potential drafting errors with the language, and that is one of the pitfalls of having an engrossed bill. To be sure, there are pluses and minuses. As per a commitment to the chair of the committee, and of course to you personally, we look forward to coming back in January and tweaking any problems there may be. I will tell you and the members that as a practical matter, as you know, there are no pending suits out there right now. We're just trying to go ahead and inoculate against a problem in the future. And thank you for the question.
Well, and there were other problems with the language, but I just wanted you to reiterate, as you did to our committee, that come January you would come back and try to correct some of the language.
Our commitment was good then, and it's good now.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
The measure passed without opposition. It was engrossed to prevent amendments and now goes to the governor for his signature.
The loophole that penalizes those who buy infants and children but not the adults who sell them will soon be closed. The House today voted in favor of Senate Bill 281. Representative Jim Stokes said the current law's shortcomings are illustrated in a case prosecuted by the district attorney for Whitfield and Murray counties.
A gentleman sold his child to a person who wound up being a chronic molester, who wound up molesting the child, and they were able to prosecute the molester but not the parent for selling the child because of this strange oversight in the law. So in order to get rid of this oversight in the law and to provide that this is an illegal activity, I'd ask that you favorably support Senate Bill 281.
The House adopted Senate Bill 281 171 to 0. The measure now goes to the governor for his approval.
Several successful amendments dramatically altered Governor Sonny Perdue's ethics legislation when it passed the Senate last month. Senate Bill 517 now sits in the House Judiciary Committee. Instead of working from the Senate version, the Judiciary's Ethics Subcommittee worked off the original version. Representative Tom Bordeaux questioned the bill's presenter, Representative Rich Golick, about that method.
Why would you all ignore what the Senate passed?
Well, I'm not sure it's a situation of ignoring. I mean, we start out, the governor has his preferred version, certainly, and his preferred version is the version that he introduced. The Senate, in its prerogative, we respect that prerogative, made its changes. We don't agree with the approach and the changes that were made, and as a means to more efficiently pass a bill, to get in front of this committee and to talk about it in the context, I believe, from Representative Moratakis' comment before, to talk about it more so in the context of SB 31 from last year, and Mr. Highsmith can correct me if I'm wrong, that'll put us in more of a contextual discussion in terms of what was discussed last year.
Although the House Judiciary Committee went over the ethics legislation in depth yesterday, they have yet to vote on the bill in any version.
The House Ways and Means Committee voted down a resolution yesterday that would amend the Constitution by freezing residential property valuations. Many people voiced their concerns over the resolution, saying it should be up to local governments to determine whether or not to place a freeze on property valuations. Senator Eric Johnson is the author of Senate Resolution 311.
We have other states that are offering these same type of incentives, and we've lost some of that industry, and we're trying to bring them back to Georgia.
This money would hire Georgia talent, technicians, actors, set production houses, catering services, and nightclubs, shopping centers, and everything else that everybody loves about Atlanta is also included. Without the extra incentives HB 1775 offers, Warner Brothers is prepared to spend this money in Louisiana. And not only will that take Jelly Beans there, but they also are considering moving the production of Dreamer, another motion picture that's set to start filming in Georgia this summer. They want to move that to another location as well. Dreamer is slated to generate $20 million in local spending.
Okay, obviously that was not the property valuation measure. That was a bill that would boost movie production in Georgia. Now we will see that tape on property evaluation. Senator Eric Johnson is the author of Senate Resolution 311.
If you limit what property owners are paying, then they're going to be far more amenable to taxes to help pay for MARTA, or gas taxes, or something to do with Grady, or sales taxes, or other alternative methods. The trouble with taxpayers are they don't believe that if you give the government another alternative method of financing that they're going to lower property taxes. What they end up doing is doing both. So I believe that by freezing property taxes on homes, taxpayers would be they'd listen far more carefully to government's attempts to increase another form of revenue.
The Atlanta Fulton County Taxpayers Association, who were in favor of the bill. We had most of the school systems who testified were against. Apartment Association, ACC, GGMA, all of them opposed the legislation because it would ultimately result in a tax shift to the business community, agriculture community, or what other type of classifications of property.
Senate Resolution 311 was voted down in the House Ways and Means Committee by a vote of 9-5 and appears to be dead for the session. Now, a bill that could boost the movie production industry in Georgia passed the Senate Finance Committee yesterday. House Bill 1775 would provide for income tax credits for certain motion picture and television production investments. Representative Richard Royal, who co-sponsors the bill, was joined by Atlanta-based music and movie producer Dallas Austin to explain the bill. Austin produced the movie Drumline and says his next major motion picture, Jelly Beans, awaits the passage of this bill.
We have other states that are offering these same type of incentives, and we've lost some of that industry, and we're trying to bring them back to Georgia.
This money would hire Georgia talent, technicians, actors, set production houses, catering services, and nightclubs, shopping centers, and everything else that everybody loves about Atlanta is also included. Without the extra incentives HB 1775 offers, Warner Brothers is prepared to spend this money in Louisiana. And not only will that take Jelly Beans there, but they also are considering moving the production of Dreamer, another motion picture that's set to start filming in Georgia this summer. They want to move that to another location as well. Dreamer is slated to generate $20 million in local spending.
Now, there are 5 other major productions that await the passage of House Bill 1775, which now heads to Senate rules. Also headed to Senate rules is House Bill 1184. That legislation would continue Georgia's sales tax holiday for this year's back-to-school season. If the bill becomes law, school supplies, including computers and clothing, will be tax-free from 12 a.m. on July 29th through midnight on August 1st.
Representative Tyrone Brooks held a press conference yesterday to support legislation that would pay active minority peace officers for benefits withheld from them prior to 1976. Before that date, the Peace Officers Annuity and Benefits Fund denied black officers and other minority officers certain benefits, even though they performed the same duties as white officers who did receive funds. David Zelski has that story.
It was the investigative work of Officer Richard Strott who discovered this issue and brought it to the Capitol.
The policy was that you had to be a member of the POAG to get in the POAB. The B is the fund, the POAG is the Peace Officers Association of Georgia, and it was racially exclusive to white males only.
1964 was a year that everything was supposed to have been eliminated in terms of segregation, but it went on to 1976.
The first-year cost of House Bill 1027 would be $1,320,000 to pay active employees who can prove they served on the force prior to 1976.
In this Georgia. This morning, Senator Vincent Ford encouraged the Senate to move this legislation forward and said if they don't, this issue will go to the courts.
These officers have already retained counsel. These officers have already asked this legislature to take care of this business. But we're not going to this session. We're not going to do the right thing this session, and it will cost the state much more than the $1 million it would cost them to do the right thing right now.
Senator Ford says the House budget has allocated the necessary funds for this bill in their version of the budget. For Lawmakers, I'm David Zelski.
Representative Brooks says legislation to aid minority officers who have already retired can be expected next year. They're keeping this issue separate from House Bill 1027 because of constitutional barriers. House Bill 1027 remains in the Senate Finance Committee. And April 1st marks the beginning of Alcohol Awareness Month in Georgia. Advocates for alcohol awareness came to the Capitol to kick off a month of upcoming events. Lawmakers Angelina Washington has more.
To celebrate the beginning of Alcohol Awareness Month, the Georgia Alcohol Policy Partnership shared their accomplishments while expressing the importance of alcohol awareness.
We want to thank all of you for coming to join us today in partnership to acknowledge April as Alcohol Awareness Month.
Recognizing that almost half of all traffic fatalities are alcohol related, the governor signed a proclamation declaring April Alcohol Awareness Month. Mothers Against Drunk Driving, the Council on Alcohol and Drugs, and Operation Zero Tolerance were among the many organizations providing the public with information and resources to prevent underage drinking, drunk driving, and all other alcohol-related problems.
There's a little 8-year-old girl on her 8th birthday crossing the street trying to get to a mailbox and gets run over by a drunk driver.
If you're hit by a drunk driver, I don't have years, weeks, days, hours, or even minutes. It's over that fast.
According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, 50% of all impaired drivers involved in fatal crashes have a blood alcohol level of 0.16 or above, which is twice the legal limit in Georgia. I'm Angelina Washington for Lawmakers.
Now, that's our broadcast for this, the 38th legislative day of the Georgia General Assembly. The 39th legislative day apparently is going to be on
April 12th. Well, according to the House, we still have to wait for passage in the Senate on that.
So we still have some time remaining in the state legislative session. Day 39 coming on April 12th, almost 2 weeks from now. Hopefully that'll give them some time to work on the budget and come to those agreements. Thanks for joining us this evening. I'm Gerald Bryant. We won't be on tomorrow.
And I'm Wendy Lawson. For everyone here at Lawmakers, good night.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.